France is located in Western Europe, bordering the Bay of Biscay and English Channel, between Belgium and Spain, southeast of the UK, also bordering the Mediterranean Sea, between Italy and Spain. It is in the middle of Belgium, Spain, and Italy. The population of France is 60,656,178. The age structure is 18.4% for ages between 0 and 14, 65.2% for ages 15 to 64, and 16.4% for 65 years and over. The median age for females is 42 years, and the median age for males is 40. Political system is a republic government. The graph above on the screen shows a more in-depth process of France's political system. Economic freedom in France is mostly over 50. Business freedom, trade freedom, monetary freedom, and property rights are the highest economic freedom indices. Government spending is the lowest with 16.4. Political stability in France was at a competitive high with 0.9 in 2004. In 2011, political stability was around 0.65, but now taking a turn and decreasing into 2016 with a political stability of 0.36, which is very low and weak. France is the midst of transition from a well-to-do modern economy that has featured extensive government ownership and intervention to one that relies more on the market mechanisms. The government has partially or fully privated many large companies, banks, and insurances. It retains controlling stakes in several leading firms, including Air France, France Telecom, Renault, and Thales, and is dominant in some sectors, particularly power, public transport, and defense industries. The telecommunicators sector is gradually being opened to competition. France's leaders remain committed to capitalism, in which they maintain social equity by means of laws, tax policies, and social spending that reduce income disparity and the impact of free markets on public health and welfare.
GDP is the output of a country's economy per person. By using purchasing power parity, it values a country's currency by what it can buy in that country, and not just by its value as measured, but by its exchange rate. France's GDP per capita based on purchasing power parity is $40,375 as of 2016, as shown on the graph. And the United States GDP per capita is $55,860. The United States GDP per capita is steadily increasing while France's is slowly decreasing. France was ranked number 38 and the United States number 19 for GDP per capita as of 2015. Economic freedom is defined as the fundamental right of every human to control his or her own labor and property. The Index of Economic Freedom, produced by the Heritage Foundation, bases economic freedom on rule of law, limited government, regulatory efficiency, and open market. France's overall score is a 62.3, but is ranked number 75. Some successes of France are rule of law and open markets because France is a strong defender of intellectual property and the government invests directly in firms in many places throughout the economy. Some concerns are management of public finance and labor freedom. As the graph shows, the United States is overall more free than France, but their scores seem to increase and decrease at the same rate. Inflation occurs due to an imbalance between demand and supply of money, changes in production and distribution costs, and increase in taxes on products. An inflation rate of 2 or 3% is good for an economy because it encourages people to buy and borrow more, because during times of lower inflation, the level of interest rate also remains low. As the graph shows, France's inflation rate fluctuated in the year 2015 but averaged out at 4%. Economic growth in France is supposed to rise gradually to 1.3% in 2016 and 1.6% in 2017 because of the lower oil prices, less fiscal contraction, and sustained monetary stimulus. The rising wages, exchange rate pass-through, and stabilizing energy prices should bring inflation back up. Low energy prices, strengthening external demand, and pro-competitive reforms should help the already increasing consumption of export volumes. However, declining house prices and weak business confidence are continuing to hurt investment, and unemployment will only lower a little. France also continues to face corruption challenges in public works and the defense industry. France ranks number 22 on the HDI index with a very high human development. Some things that stand out are that their life expectancy is 82.2 years under health, they have a 50.1 unemployment to population ratio under work, employment, and vulnerability, and France has a homicide rate of 1 per 100,000 people under human security as compared to the United States with a homicide rate of 4.7 per 100,000 people. Foreign direct investment flows show the value of cross-border transactions that have to do with direct investment. Outward flows of FDI represent transactions that increase the investment that investors in their own economy have in enterprises in a foreign economy. In France's case, the outward flows are by far larger than their inward flows. Inward flows represent transactions that increase the investment that foreign investors have in enterprises in the reporting economy minus transactions that decrease the investment of foreign investors in their enterprises. Foreign direct investment stocks take into account the total amount of direct investment at a point in time. In regards to both France's and the United States' percent of GDP, France's FDI stock is larger in both inward and outward FDI stock. The U.S. dollar has been worth more than the euro because the European Central Bank is buying bonds with newly printed money, while the Federal Reserve is getting ready to raise rates, which mean interest rates are falling, sometimes in the negative territory, and then rising in the United States. As of 2016, the average euro is worth 1.089 for 1 U.S. dollar, and the average U.S. dollar is worth 0.892 for 1 euro. France is a member of the European Union and is the United States' third largest trading partner in Europe. On average, over 1 billion in commercial transactions take place every single day. The United States is the top destination for France investment, and the United States is the largest foreign investor in France. France's exports to America amounted to $47.9 billion. The top 5 exports to America are 1. Machines, engines, and pumps amounting to $9.6 billion. 2. Aircraft and spacecraft amounting to $6.1 billion. 3. Alcoholic beverages amounting to $3.7 billion. And 4. Pharmaceuticals amounting to $2.5 billion. And finally, collector's items for $2.5 billion as well. For U.S. exports to France, it amounted to $32.3 billion. The top 5 are aircraft and spacecraft for $8.7 billion, oil for $5.1 billion, 3 machines, engine, and pumps for $2.8 billion, 4 electronic equipment for $2.1 billion, and finally, medical and technical equipment for $2.1 billion.
In France, the freedom of religion and thought was guaranteed by the 1789 Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. That gives people the right to believe and worship whoever they wish to. Most people in France are Roman Catholics, which is about 86% of the population. Then we have Muslims at 7%, unaffiliated at 4%, Protestant at 2%, and Judaism at 1%. Now looking at the Hofstede data of France and of the U.S., we can see that France is ahead of the U.S. in power distance, uncertainty avoidance, and long-term orientation. That means that French usually avoid uncomfortable situations and are very persistent. With a power distance score of 68, that means that most of the French acknowledge that inequality amongst people happens. Looking at the Trumpeter data, the U.S. scores just above France in almost every category. If you thought of France, technology usually isn't the first thing that pops into your head. But surprisingly enough, France is actually one of the leading pioneers in technology development. Aside from being the third country to launch a satellite into space, France has led in the development and creation of a lot of basic tech that we all use in our daily lives, such as refrigerators and electric engines. This graph shows the expenditure on R&D over the past. France is very well below the U.S. and other countries, and just barely over Italy. But most professionals believe that France can become an R&D powerhouse if they would spend a little bit more money into that category. The Environmental Performance Index between the U.S. and France is pretty consistent other than the forests and fisheries, which France dominates over the U.S. Air pollution is 12 micrograms per cubic meter in France, about 361,273 kilotons of total carbon dioxide. The environmental impact of solid fuels in France is 15.8%, liquid fuels at 72.4%, 3.2% on cement production, and 8.6% on bunker fuels. Aside from liquid fuels and bunker fuels, France scores less than the U.S. in all the other categories. In France, the legal system is based entirely on written civil law. Napoleon created the system of administrative law and called it the Napoleonic Code. The code governs all the branches of French law, including Code Civil, the Code Fiscal, and the Code Penal. France has two justice systems, administrative and judiciary. Administrative deals with cases involving the government and individuals, and judiciary deals with the civil and criminal cases. France does not have a jury system. It was abolished in 1941, but defendants are entitled to a jury when the case involves a felony, minimum of 15 years. Now, looking at the SWOT analysis, France has tremendous potential to grow. They just need good leaders to lead them through the tough and difficult times. They have leaders in the development of nuclear technology and have leading economics in various categories, such as automotive, aerospace, and etc. France also, before recent events, was the #1 tourist spot. Unfortunately, France's lack of presence in the economic world brings them out as a lesser country, financially. But, fortunately enough, France has some good opportunities. Since they are known for tourism, they need to capitalize on tourist sales. They also need to start spending more money to fund the R&D groups. As for threats, the government is having internal problems, and the rise of unemployment is definitely a threat to their economy. The biggest thing that's happened in France currently is terrorist attacks that have occurred. We were able to talk to one of our ex-culture group members that lives in France to give us a little background on how terrorism is affecting her country.